Okay, so I'm looking at the communication that you gave us, communication 369.8, and we have currently hit 4.4 million on expenses on Mauna Kea, which is a pretty
Correct.
substantial jump from our 3.6 we were at earlier this year. Was that September 3rd? Do we have a, what is the reason for that? Or is it Chief in Hilo too?
No, I'm the only one here.
Okay.
I mean, relating to this, but I believe that I have one other one that probably didn't get communicated to you guys, but there was an interim report. So between September 3rd and September 12th, they spent 447,000. And then between September 12th, which actually included the September 15th payroll, to yesterday, they spent another 330,000. So the total is 4.4 million.
Wow. That is a large figure.
But much less than that first period when it was roughly $3 million, in a short frame of time.
Yeah, we did a very substantial jump again. So I was surprised at that. Do we, or have we yet received a signed and agreed on MOA from the governor's office?
It's actually with the AG's office, and I believe the AG's office is reviewing it and had just some minor changes. So I think we should be receiving that hopefully later this week. Yeah.
Do you know why that took so long?
No, I don't.
Because I found an agreement from the Maui County guys, from one of our fellow council members, and she had a very clear MOA, or interdepartmental assignment agreement, that was signed and dated July 16th, 2019, and it clearly states that HPD, our Hawaii Island Police Department, will reimburse Maui Police Department for all of their costs. Mm-hmm. Have we gotten any word on that, or whether we are or aren't reimbursing Maui County?
My understanding, and I don't have this for sure, but my understanding is that Maui submitted their bills directly to the AG's office.
Okay, this memorandum I have in front of me is very clear, signed by both our chief and the chief of police of Maui, that says that we will be reimbursing them. And you've never seen this before?
I did receive it just prior to the meeting, but no, not prior to today.
Yeah, this is the first time that I've seen it, and they had this from September 3rd. So I was very surprised to see this, but it also was something we touched on earlier in our meetings during early September. So I would like to know if we are or aren't on the hook for the cost that Maui has incurred, and then of course Honolulu County as well.
Okay, I can
Because
try
this is
that
very
out.
clear. I read the agreement. We are supposed to reimburse them. Besides that, last week we talked about mass transit, and there was a section that we covered in that mass transit meeting, section 10-11, that touched on the county incurring financial obligations or making payments. And in the case of our police force, and I'm using the police force because they are at $4,185,000 by themselves, and it looks like from that section 1011 that we are supposed to make sure that we can actually fund and have the financial ability to cover the cost before taking on a project or incurring any financial obligation. So did we understand that there was going to be $4 million in output for this project, or for our part in this project?
I don't know what all they looked at prior to this starting.
And whose job is it to take a look at that before we decide to enter into an agreement, although we don't have an agreement, but Whose job would that be?
We have a process we follow, but generally the department heads are the first ones to review it and determine that they have sufficient funding for the project.
And when we talk about funding for the project, I mean, right now we're enforcing a small section of highway with more officers than I have in my entire district. So I'm wondering what the thought process behind, I know, the financial side of this was. And I mean, how far into the future did we look? Did we say, yeah, we can just cover this indefinitely?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what that process or that thought process is with them.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. We were talking about something off subject, but that one caught me, and it just said we are supposed to be aware before making any kind of jump into a project or any kind of payment that the budget has to be sustainable, that we have to be able to sustain that expenditure without going over budget or using up any part of our budget that wasn't allotted for that. So in this case, if we weren't aware that we were going to go this far into debt, then at what point do we decide to say we're done?
Or did you want me to answer that?
Yeah, well, if you have an answer, that'd be wonderful.
No, I mean, police is, working with AG as is Corporation Counsel to get the agreement, and I believe they're relying on that to be able, to get the funding. And if something happened and they find out they wouldn't be getting the funding, then I'm sure they would reevaluate, their thought process.
Yeah, and the agreement with the state was actually a conditional agreement that we maintain our service to them, or they would cut our funding. So there's a lot of interesting things at work here. And it worries me. It worries me because I don't think we expected to be $4.4 million in debt in this instance, and yet here we are. Do you know what the current budget for the police salary, wages, and overtime is?
I didn't bring the current budget with me, but it is significant.
It is pretty significant. So at $4 million, are we even worried about going over budget, or we just have unlimited funds to extend?
No, I mean, I'm sure they are concerned, as am I, that, $4 million is not something that you anticipate having additional expenditures in of that amount.
And I'm wondering why there's no process involved here where the resolution or any kind of legislation will happen before we incur a cost of this size. Is there supposed to be a process involved here?
So, I believe I've said previously I wasn't involved in that initial planning process. So I don't know the entire thought process that, went down. I think I also have said previously that when we get the MOA, we will come forward for the intergovernmental agreement as well as the appropriation to appropriate those funds.
Interesting.
I'm not in any way implying that we should renege on any kind of agreement, but by its own terms, it refers to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 78-27. Okay, so that's the authority for this agreement. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked at 78-27, it does provide for interdepartmental agreements, but the employer, which when I look through the definitions that are applicable to this, says that it has to be by the mayor and the mayors of the counties. I don't see anything that authorizes the police chiefs to do that. So I'm just wondering.
So what I don't know is whether there's other pieces of this document. So I would have to.
Yeah. So again, there might be something in the back that contains the mayor's signatures. I really don't know, and that's why I asked if your office had reviewed it, because don't you guys normally have to sign your approval as to form and legality on
right.
all?
But
it only has for the.
But this was So I'm not sure whether we even received this.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of wondering. As I said, I'm not saying that we're supposed to be, we should renege, but I just found it kind of odd that
Yeah,
the
it's
police chiefs were signing off. It
yeah, and
seems
then I wanted
contrary.
to address something earlier that was brought up. I'm aware that the AG's is reviewing the agreement.
And yeah, are you involved in any of that with the AG's office?
We are.
Okay, because I gotta say this. Even if I, said that I'm, standing up for the rule of law, there's got to be some point where we got to sign that MOA, right? I mean, because I'm very uncomfortable about this arrangement.
Yeah, and we just had a last contact, with the AGs today. So I feel comfortable. Add that on with a letter that was sent to the council, which wasn't the clearest letter in the world, but at
Right.
least it had the basic that they're going to reimburse for the police, because I noticed that the bulk of the costs here, about 97% of it, over 97% is police related, and it's clear to me, because we have the backing of the governor, basically, that he's going to reimburse.
Yeah. Okay.
for
Well,
that.
and I also got to say this. Regardless of which side of the equation you are, on this, I don't think too many people are real happy with the police presence up there. They're kind of wondering, what's the reason? Well, that's not for you to
That's
answer. Yeah, but
yeah,
I've been
because
getting a
you
lot
go
of
both ways on
comments.
this one.
Yeah, and it's even from people who are in favor of TMT saying,
Right.
well, why? Right. Anyway,
There's reasons, but I'm not here to, talk about it.
Sorry, and Deanna, you might have explained this, but the notes on the second page of your communication, it says fire has billed and received, and then it says police has billed through the end of August.
Yes.
And so, assuming all of that will be reimbursed, my quick math shows a balance of about 500,000 left to be reimbursed.
Yes, so they bill through the end of August. So that leaves the time in September that hasn't been billed yet. And in addition, when I use my cost accounting report, the fringes don't match exactly, so it may not be the full 500,000.
Okay. So we did get reimbursed for fire's time,
Yes, we did.
but we're still waiting on police's time.
Yes, and they said the payment would be forthcoming as soon as the MOA is signed, is
Got
my
it.
understanding.
And so walking back to the MOA, because there's other departments here, prosecuting attorneys, public works, mayor's office, parks, how do we capture that time?
When you say capture, you mean get reimbursed?
Yes, to get reimbursed for that time.
My understanding is we probably will not be reimbursed for the other departments, only for police and fire.
Can we try?
We can always try.
My Jedi mind is saying we're going to try. Can try.
I think Corporation Council is trying very hard in that respect. It was actually through them that I got the understanding that it's just for police and fire. I think they have been working with AG's office. And so our understanding is it's only police and fire.
Do we not have an agreement between our mayors? Nobody signed except two chiefs signed an agreement with each other? Is that right, Deanna?
I'm sorry. I have not seen any agreements other than this one you presented today. So I honestly don't know.
Have you heard
I'm
of
not
one?
aware of. No, I have not. But I also am not the main one negotiating or discussing.
Okay. And then at what point does the police department have to come before us to ask for a budget amendment to increase their salaries, wages, and overtime?
I believe that would only happen if the memorandum of agreement with the AG's office for some reason fell through, because that would, as I mentioned earlier, when we come in with the agreement, we'll do the appropriation at the same time.
I'm a little confused that we have no process involved for taking on this kind of debt. I mean, I'm new, but it just bothered me a little bit that there was no having to come before the council for any kind of ask before we changed what the budget was allotted for. Even though we can clarify that it is for salaries, wages, overtime for the police department, we don't actually have any kind of process to protect us and give us a little bit of say as a county. And I'm surprised at that, because we do have a lot. I mean, just that section 1011, I read that a few times and looked at it, and it seemed clear that through that section there has to be some sort of resolution. For mass transit, it was a multi-year contract. They needed a resolution before council. In this case, we're spending $4 million in the effort of patrolling a highway for whatever reason we may be doing that, and yet we had no need for a resolution or any kind of agreement at all.